Mr. Price says drugs and marriage don't mix, which is why he has rededicated himself to the Lord. Unfortunately, he says his wife has other ideas. Today on Divorce Court. All rise. The Honorable Judge Starr presiding. Your Honor, this is the case of Price v. Price.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Mr. and Mrs. Price, we are now in divorce court. Mr. and Mrs. Price, you've been together for 15 years, married for 13 years, no children together. However, there are 4 adult children, a part of your blended family. Am I correct?
You're correct,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Mr. Price, why are we in divorce court today?
Well, Your Honor, I've enjoyed a very long and blessed relationship with my wife, and we did very good until the moment that methamphetamine came into our lives. We both started using practically at the same time, and it didn't take long after that, within a year or two, our whole marriage, our whole lives went downhill, and I even come to the point of almost losing my life before I finally became realizing that if I didn't give up the drug was going to take me and take me out of this world. And I prayed to the Lord that he would help me and save me and get me back on my feet, and he did so some 122 days ago.
God bless you.
But I'm afraid that my wife is not going with the same program, and I'm afraid that she might still be using. If that's the case, Your Honor, I'd hate to say it, but I will have to serve her with these divorce papers today because my sobriety is job one. I can't be good to nobody else unless I'm not good to me, and I want to be good for her, but if she doesn't want the same thing, then my sobriety is very, very important to me, and I can't risk it.
I understand completely, Mr. Price, absolutely. Mrs. Price, your husband has decided to get busy living rather than get busy dying. What say you?
Well, Your Honor, I'm here today because I want to save my marriage. When we got together, everything was perfect, and like he said, methamphetamines came into the picture and it ruined us. I love my husband. He means the world to me.
Here's the question. Do you love him enough to listen to what he's saying about what he needs to make this marriage work?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll start from there. That's fair enough. Mr. Price, take me back to a time when you first met and you had a happy marriage.
Okay, I'll take you back to the initial part of our relationship. We were good friends for a couple years, 2.5 years, and all of a sudden, I got an idea that, you know, the woman's looking pretty decent. I mean, she's looking like a decent woman, and maybe I'll suggest we go out for a drink on St. Patrick's Day. So I thought I'd take her out for a drink on St. Patrick's. We went out, we had a drink, we had a nice dance. I took her home to her apartment, and upon having the last night cigarette before I went home, it came upon me to give her a kiss. And I know her background's a little rough, and I didn't know exactly how it would be received, but I was bold enough, and I gave her a kiss.
Did she reciprocate?
I don't know. I was kind of so emotional and a little frightened, to be honest. I was kind of frightened. I dashed off, ran down to my car, my truck, and drove out really quick.
So it was a sneak kiss?
It was like a kamikaze kiss. I went and kissed, and then I got out of there. So I didn't find out till later that she was actually tickled about it, and it made her smile, and it made her open up. She blossomed into a beautiful woman and turned out to be a good wife.
And so 15 years ago when you all met, it seems that you dated for a couple of years and then you got married.
Correct.
During those couple of years, is that when the drug use started or did it happen after you got married?
After we got married, it did.
What brought you to start using drugs, Mrs. Price?
I saw old acquaintances because I was an addict before, and I saw old acquaintances and started using again. And he didn't use, and he caught me in the garage one day, and he said, well, if I can't beat him, I'll join him. And he started using as well, and that was the demise of our relationship.
So you introduced your husband to drugs.
Correct.
What was the catalyst for getting sober?
Well, Your Honor, the lengthy time of using the drugs, it caused me to get COPD. And I got COPD in October 9th of last year. I contracted COVID. Well, with COVID and COPD...
You about to die.
I did. I honestly did, Your Honor. I almost died.
You're about to die. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, I was in the emergency room for 2.5 hours breathing with steroids and everything to get my oxygen level out because a doctor said if I waited another day that we wouldn't be going to the hospital, I would be going to the morgue.
Yes, sir.
So I pleaded to God, please save me, please save me. And he said he would. He said he'd reach down and pick me up out of it. But I had to give up the bad habit. Otherwise,
Mrs. Price, that would have been a wake-up call for me also. If my husband caught COPD, COVID, and almost died, was it a wake-up call for you?
It was. I was very scared of him dying. It was a touch and go. But my mother had passed away the same time.
Oh, my goodness.
And
I'm so sorry
I started
that you all were dealing
dabbling
with that.
again into drugs after her death.
So did you stop doing drugs when he stopped doing drugs?
We both went through treatment.
You actually entered into a treatment
Yes,
facility.
outpatient.
And how long did you do the treatment?
A year.
Really?
Yes.
So you both committed to be living a clean life?
Yes.
correct.
What about you? Because I hear that Mr. Price has found God again, because you know God was never lost.
No, well, I lost.
Okay. But it sounds like this is an important part of your life, Mr. Price. But Mrs. Price, I haven't heard you talk at all in this regard. How has his revelation, if you will, affected you?
Your Honor, we live like roommates. He lives in the living room, I live in the bedroom. And he watches programs, religious programs. And I think that we have company sometimes because he's yelling, he's talking to the TV. And I'm an agnostic.
Now, that's interesting.
And he does not respect my beliefs.
In all honesty, as a Christian woman, I know that the Bible says that being equally yoked is a big deal, okay? However, if that's not the way you live your life, it's hard to be equally yoked in that regard. So that's only something that the two of you can decide. And I don't think we can decide that part right now because there's some additions that are going on in your marriage, one of which has to do with finances.
Yes, Your Honor.
What is that, Mr. Price?
Our house burnt down a year ago, and I got an insurance settlement of $12,000. And Mr. Price didn't see any of it. I spent it on gambling and drugs.
$12,000?
$12,000, and it was gone in a day.
Huh? Girl, that ain't that many drugs in the world for you to spend $12,000 in a day. What kind of drugs were you doing?
My wife has a funny philosophy when it comes to money. Her money is her money, and half of my money is her money. I get half of my money that I work for every month. Her money is her money, and then she's after half of my money.
How does that manifest itself in your relationship?
Your Honor, she makes almost twice as much money a month as I do. A lot more. She makes a lot more money a month than I do. But yet there's always instances where, oh, can I borrow $25 from your husband? Or like just last month, I'm watching football. The football playoffs are on. All of a sudden the cable goes out. I'm like, whoa, what? And I said, honey, did you pay the cable bill? Yes, I paid the cable bill. So right after the third day, I finally said, hey, I got a call and they said, oh, well, there's a $98 bill owing. And I said, well, that's all I wanted to know. I said, I'll pay the money, but you were supposed to pay that. But I ended up paying that myself. Because
Mrs. Price, what's up with you and money?
Your Honor, I'm horrible with money. I admit that. In fact, our house burnt down a year ago, and I got an insurance settlement of $12,000. Okay. And Mr. Price didn't see any of it. I spent it on gambling and drugs and my grandsons.
$12,000?
$12,000, and it was gone in a day.
Huh?
2 days.
2 days.
I don't even understand how that's possible.
I couldn't either.
Drugs, gambling.
Forgive me for being familiar, but girl, that ain't that many drugs in the world for you to spend $12,000 in a day. What kind of drugs were you doing?
Methamphetamines. Gambling took up a lot of it.
It's clear to me that you might need to have another stint in a treatment program.
I agree. And I go out late at night. He's 63, I'm 55. I have the spirit of an 18-year-old. I like to go do things.
You won't make it to 56 if you continue to live like that, ma'am.
I'm telling her the same thing, Your Honor. I don't want her to die.
Well, I'm not going to make it to 56 if we don't have sex soon either.
So you're telling me that not only is money an issue, but intimacy is an issue.
Intimacy. You know, we're married. We should be intimate, and we haven't had sex for 8 years. He tried last week, a couple weeks ago, but he couldn't perform. And I think some of that has to do with when I was heavy in my addiction, I started escorting.
You started escorting. Now, that's a nice word for whoring, in my opinion.
Right, correct.
Right.
Okay? I mean, listen, I don't have time
That's the straight truth.
to be BSing with folk. So, if that's an option in your marriage,
It's done.
is that something that your husband and you have agreed on?
No, that was years ago. But I think he still has a block from that.
Were you aware of this?
Of her being, I was aware of her going out, and I was aware of her making money, but I wasn't too sure how she was making this money. I knew she always had her drugs and stuff like that, so I didn't know. But I tried, like she said, I tried to reconcile and have sex with her because, you know, I know people need sex. Some people need more than others. Like she said, about 3 weeks ago, we had a dinner, nice dinner, some wine, and went to bed. And I tried to have some action in the bedroom for her. But the minute I laid down with her a little bit, I smelled something. I could smell meth, Your Honor.
Smelling drugs on your wife does not turn you on.
Correct, Your Honor.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but this is not my ministry. I'm a legal expert. With your permission, I'd like to have someone who really does know about addictions to help us navigate some of these waters. Is that okay?
Yes.
That might be the reason why you all have not been intimate in the last 8 years, because you all are not connected with each other. You're not.
We used to be.
But you're not equally yoked on multiple levels. You're not equally yoked financially. You're not equally yoked on a religious basis. You're not equally yoked on an intimate basis. You know, not to put too fine a point on it, but this is not my ministry. I'm a legal expert. With your permission, I'd like to have someone who really does know about addictions to help us navigate some of these waters. Is that okay?
Yes.
Absolutely. Wonderful. It is my understanding that I have available Mr. Kenneth Seeley, who can't be here physically, but he's here virtually to help me with some questions. Mr. Seeley, welcome to Divorce Court.
Hi, Your Honor. How are you?
I'm glad to have you. Will you please share some of your personal and professional background with my litigants? Tell me what it is that you do.
So I'm usually called in from families to do an intervention on a loved one that is in denial. So I've been doing interventions for over 20 years now. It's over 35 years. But usually when there's a dysfunctional behavior on one side of the family, the other side will call me in and say, is there a way that we could work this out and make this work? Or should we just end it? Should we end the relationship?
So, Mr. Seeley, what advice do you have for Mrs. Price in order to get clean? Because that's where we need to start our conversation.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Price really has to focus on her recovery. And, you know, listening to this situation, you know, is it really fair? Ask yourself a question. Is it fair for your husband to have to live this way, like knowing that you're out there using, not knowing if you're out there prostituting, all those things that you're talking about, spending all that money? Is it fair to put that on another human being, especially somebody that you say you love?
And that's, you know what? You asked the question, I'm going to turn it in and ask to our defendant. Mrs. Price, is that fair?
Absolutely not.
So if Mrs. Price has to ask whether or not it's fair, and we all agree that it is not, what does Mr. Price need to do in order to maintain his sobriety?
Well, I think what he's doing is coming here and being in front of you is the right thing to do. Like, he has to separate himself if she's not gonna come to the table and be fair, like the way you put it. You know, you got to start yoking together. You got to start connecting. And you have so many different ways, but the drugs has to be the first one off the table.
What's very clear is one person cannot continue to use and the other person maintain a relationship and stay clean.
It won't happen.
That's absolutely not going to happen. Mr. Seeley, what I'd like to be able to order from this court is that there be individual treatment for Mrs. Price in terms of detoxing first. Because anybody who has done meth in the last 7 days, we need to get her healthy. We need to start with physical health. Then, after detox, then we're in rehab. And they're both going to need to be in rehab and recovery because it's still one day at a time for Mr. Price. Am I correct?
Correct. And couples counseling, I think, is going to be really
Absolutely.
important.
So it's a three-parter. It's individual treatment for you to detox, to get that crap out of your system. It is continued repair and recovery.
Abstinence, yes.
So that you can maintain a drug-free lifestyle. And then it's couples therapy so that you can learn to communicate, avoid miscommunication, and get back to loving each other. Mrs. Seeley, have I summarized that correctly?
Perfect. Spot on.
Mr. and Mrs. Price, that is a plan, but it does not work unless the two of you sign on to it. Mr. Price?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you sign on to the plan that I've just outlined?
I agree to, and I do appreciate Mr. Seeley's help, too, because I have a lot of respect for his knowledge. I have a lot of respect for his experience, and I feel if anybody can help in this matter, that this gentleman would be able to help quite well.
Mrs. Price, would you be willing to accept the court's order?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Seeley, I want to say thank you. Thank you very much for the work that you have done, for the families that you have assisted, and for your assistance that you're providing to this court.
You're welcome, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Price, addiction is never easy.
No, it's
for
not.
the individual, for the couple, for the family. But trust and believe that your children and your grandchildren would like to have you around for at least a little bit longer. And you can be here for them.
Right.
You can be here for each other, but importantly, you can be here for yourselves. You have to care enough about yourself that you don't sell yourself short or anything else, if you know what I mean. Get those drugs out of your system. And sir, continue to walk in the path that you're walking, because whatever revelation has been brought to you has really put you on a path of sobriety.
Yes, ma'am.
And sanity. You brought divorce papers.
I did, Your Honor.
Corey, will you retrieve the divorce papers for me?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Price, you brought divorce papers prepared to have them served for the state of Oregon. Can I get rid of these divorce papers, or would you like me to put them on hold?
Would you hold them just for maybe a couple months?
It's going to take longer than a couple months, but I tell you what, they're in order.
Okay.
They're in place, Ms. Price. Let's see if you can fulfill the promises that you made today.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do I have your commitment, ma'am?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Price, let me know. I'll hold these in your court file.
Okay.
We're done here.
Thank
you have
you,
my
Your
verdict.
Your Honor.
Well, what do you think about that?
I think that it was, Mr. Seeley will be a good influence for me with his help.
Yes, he's got great experience, too.
I
Lots of
understand
innings.
that this is serious.
Yes.
I didn't understand it before,
Right.
how serious it was.
It's hard because drugs always dulls your
They do.
senses. Things not so important are very important, and things that aren't important become
Right, very important.
Made